Sorry I missed out on last week's Friday Flash. I don't remember what happened, but things have been a little busy lately. But I'm back with this week's Friday Flash, and it is a bit of a continuation with the Reinhold and the Three Sisters story that I had started and have links down below into the couple of books that are released about him and that scenario. This week's piece actually deviates just a little bit. I never intended to write a story with Reinhold and an actual fairy. Um, at the time in my personal life, however, there were some people that were very important to me, which is what the whole series is kind of based off of anyway. But one of them was a woman that I really don't think she's human. She's too small to be human, but she's also kind of got a really wicked sense of humor. And at the time, we were talking and flirting back and forth, a definite naughty streak. And just seeing the photos of her when she was modeling in the Gothic community, she reminded me of a fairy. So I wondered where I could throw her into when I didn't have anything that was geared towards fairies. I wasn't writing them on purpose, with the exception of a particular novel, and this is kind of where she came into play. The flasher is called Fae Troubles. I hope you enjoy. The little redhead nuzzled his neck. If you come closer, I'll show you what I want to do to you. Breathing in lush green forest and earth, Reinhold stroked her cheek, a finger sliding over the softness of her skin. But they're angry at me. Reinhold lifted his head from her lips. The redhead fairy sat in his arms, a tiny figure with porcelain skin and blood-red hair, with pert breasts and a sweet, curvy ass. I don't care. You're mine, sweetheart, she nodded, nuzzling his chest with her mouth. He nodded in return, his grin widening to reach his eyes. I want you, little Fae. You're perfection in my hands. You're sweet and lovable and wicked. Her lips curled upward. Taking his hand in hers, she slid off the couch and pulled him down the hallway into a room. She pushed the door open and stretched out a hand. After you, my wolf. Reinhold stepped into the room. His sight as a wolf adjusted to the candle-lit darkness. A bed sat in the center, surrounded by candles of varying sizes and scents that overwhelmed him at first. Sweet aromas perfumed the room. Jasmine, lavender, sandalwood. He inhaled deeply, feeling her hand at the base of his hips. After a moment, the different aromas began to calm his fears. The fairy stepped past him and turned to face him. Reinhold followed her closely, smelling her obvious arousal. Cadiera had told him to go with the flow, to be accepting of his little Fae. She was a gift. A sensual, magical gift that could lighten the wolf's mind and help his aura. He needed that. Being around his essence had given him a newfound strength. Time spent with Miss Christie had given him... what? He still had to figure that out. The time spent between the two had been sparse, but he cherished the moments with each of his dominants even as he rebelled internally toward them. It wasn't right, humans telling a wolf what to do, but Lynn and Mistress Chrissy held a lot more sway than typical humans did. As for the young pup, Cadiera had a wealth of wisdom. When Cadiera told him to come visit with his little Fae and stay for tea and sex, he didn't disagree. Clutching his hand, the little Fae led him to the bed, settling herself down on the comforter with daintiness that he didn't miss. Patting a space beside her, she urged him toward her. Please? She rubbed her naked thighs with both hands. He couldn't stand it much further. His cock hardened, Every nerve and muscle in his body tensed, ready for something more than standing around. His body was on fire. She'd only kissed him moments ago. Her lips tasted like cherry and vodka. Then, perfection. Soft and pliant, her lips were moist and gentle beneath his. Taking his tongue inside her mouth, she let his hands glide over her breasts, pinching the nipples to harden peaks until she cried. "You hurt," she grinned. "You like it," he nipped back. She bit along the line of his jaw. "I do indeed, my sweet." His voice dropped to a hushed whisper. "This is for you. Just you." She nodded in understanding. His heart swelled with pride. She climbed on top of him and began a slow, sensual movement that built into a rhythm. Both enjoyed the sensation of skin against skin, her bobbing up and down on him, their lips meeting for rough kisses that were sure to bruise. He broke out in a slick sweat, panting, moaning at her tightness. She cried aloud, impaling herself harder and harder on his prick. His balls slapped against her, fingers digging into her flesh. She jolted up and down wildly on him, swirling her hips around, mouth hanging open with each thrust. When she came, he did too, wrapping his arms around her slender waist and burying his head in the crook of her neck. "I love you, little Fae." She pushed him back and remained on top of him. "I love you too, my sweet wolf." A few hours later, he woke to the sound of loud pounding on the door. His little Fae head remained on top of him, legs stretched out alongside his. The contrast of her blood-red hair against white skin brought a smile to his face. "Come in!" He threw the sheet and blanket over them. Two large men appeared, fully dressed in jeans and work shirts. "You're on our little sister." The fairy tensed her thighs around him. Meeting his gaze, she narrowed her eyes. Reinhold rubbed the back of her head and forced her to rest against his chest. "Actually," he cleared his throat, "she's on me. And she started this. Now unless you have business," he growled in a whisper, "leave us. She's sleeping." The larger one of the two arched an eyebrow. "I would fear for my health if I were you both." Reinhold motioned with his eyes at the large black knife on the bedside table. Eyebrow backed off. "Fine." He scowled before turning to leave. His brother joined him and shut the door behind him. Yawning, Reinhold's little face stirred, her mouth moving against his bare chest. With a yawn, she looked into his eyes. "Are my brothers giving you trouble?" He shook his head. "No, sweetheart. Nothing I can't manage. They're only human." Stroking the back of her head, he ran his fingers through her short curls, playing out with the baby hairs at the base of her skull. She arched against him, reached between her legs to feel him inside her. "This could be fun. Do me." She shot him a wicked grin. His cock stirred to life again inside her. Hands cupped her bottom and pulled her tighter against him. "Anytime." So I think that's actually the last one of these that has to do with that particular group of people, creatures. And when I come back next week for Friday Flash, I'll have something different. Probably something from one of my upcoming stories, considering we have a release on the 14th of February. You can check out the details in the description and links down below. If you like what you are hearing, don't forget to subscribe, share this, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Again, this is all much older material than what I'm putting out now, but I wanted to find a way to use it and, obviously reach a larger audience. So this is how I'm going to do it for the time being. I appreciate you guys for checking this out, and thank you to my Patreon people who heard this first, and the rest of you, if you're interested in contributing to my well-being as an author, The links are down below to my Patreon. Even a little $1 a month helps. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and until next week, or a YouTube video or a Facebook Live, cheers.